So this is the part where I should play the PlayStation 1 sound.
Yep.
And then I should, for some reason, I play the Zelda sound. And then I said, hello, hola community. Welcome to the Blender conference. Exactly. The Blender conference podcast. Let's call it like that. This is the first time we do something like this. We used to have the live streams from all the rooms, or, well, actually the one room, the big room, and then maybe another one, but this year the conference is way too big, way too many rooms. So we decided to actually have guests, people from the community that are visiting the conference. And super tiny. I don't think a few people can even notice. So I'm going to talk to you guys directly. So we have 3 guests here. You probably know me from the Blender Today live streams on this channel, but you maybe don't know these people. Oh, you probably do. They are big stars. Right. So Nikki.
Hi, I'm Nicole, but many people know me in social media as Nikki Blender. I'm a 22 years old girl who was born in Venezuela, but my mother is from Spain and my father is from Italy. And a few months ago, I finished my university degree, and now I'm dedicating to create 3D models. Concurrently, I model cozy and cute scenes in Blender, and I'm in love with the program.
Yeah, it's we all seen your work. Have you seen her work?
I have not, but I just subscribed, so
Oh.
I definitely am going to.
I've seen it like many times. I didn't know it was you. So welcome, Nikki. You're at Nikki.blender, right?
Yes, on Instagram.
On Instagram. Okay. So on this side we have.
Hi, so my name's Jesse. I run a YouTube channel called Kaizen Tutorials. So usually people online call me Kaizen or Kaizen Tutorials. Doesn't really matter. And I've been doing it for about 2 years. And on the side, I'm a freelance 3D artist. So yeah, love doing the content. I make general videos on Blender. So it could be shading, texturing, geometry nodes. I do a lot of geometry node stuff as well. And I try to cover mostly any topic that I find interesting or that my viewers might find interesting.
That's cool. I actually mentioned you a few times in the Blender Today podcast because as I am sharing the new features, you probably already covered them.
Yeah.
And I am actually learning a bit from what you were saying. So you should check out also his channel. And on this other side, you have been already as a guest on Blender Today during the pandemic, remember?
Yes.
So who are you?
Yes, it was a long time ago. It's my turn now. It's hard.
Yeah. So who are you? Where you come from? And what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, what the heck I'm doing here? I'm from Paris. I am Dedus. It's my username, but my real name is Andre, and I am an illustrator, animator. I do some kind of stuff mostly on social media, on all social media. So I am also a freelancer. But most of my projects are personal projects, and I'm trying to make a living out of it.
Wow. And, well, actually, I want to talk a little bit about that. So the name of this podcast today is called Creators, because I think we are all, in one way, creators. I am creating a podcast right now, but you're actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're making a living directly or indirectly because of Blender's stuff, right? So you said you have 22 years old. This is the Blender conference, actually the number, well, because of the pandemic, but Blender is 20 years old. So how long have you actually been using Blender? How did Blender arrive in your life?
About 5-6 years ago, when I was in high school, a teacher taught us the program, and I fell in love with Blender. And I dream about make models like that, but my skills weren't so good. So when I started at the university, I forgot about it. And until the third year of the career, I didn't open the program again. But I thought that in that career, the teachers taught us how to model in Blender, but it wasn't so. So I decided to learn on my own. And for this reason, I created my Instagram account on December 2020. And 2 years ago, I decided to model. And until now that I created, a space is totally different from the ones that I created when I started. So I'm here and I'm so nervous. This is my first podcast, my first Blender conference, and my first time in Amsterdam.
A lot of firsts today.
Yeah, I'm so happy for that.
Wow. Well, the conference just started actually this morning. There's been like a few talks only. I didn't get to see much, but it's nice to see that you're actually enjoying it so far, even though it can be scary. I told you that we have one thing in common. All 700 people in this conference is that we all I would say love Blender, but I don't want to like add words, to you.
No, yeah, love is fine.
But we are involved sentimentally with Blender one way or another, and it's funny to hear that it's actually you started learning on your own, and it is the case of many. I think the dudes you have also learned. You didn't go to like a Blender, no, because your style. You made your own style and way of using Blender and Grease Pencil in ways that was probably not even designed for it. So how did you start with using Blender and why?
Yeah, it was I think 4 years ago, 4 years, maybe 5, that I discovered Blender. I've used it before, but it was the old version, when it was the right click. It was a long time ago. But the style I'm doing now with Blender, it's something that I've tried to do a long time ago with other softwares. I've tried to mix 2D and 3D animations together, and it was never working. The PNG images are artifacts, nothing. I gave up, and one day I saw the trailer by Daniel Martinez. He said we are going to release a 2D tool in Blender. So on that day, I started downloading the betas, and I remember I was watching every week the updates.
Yeah.
The Blender Today, that you made every Monday. I was checking, so where is it coming? And that's how it started. I already had a vague idea of what I wanted to do in my mind, but I was just waiting for the right software to have it. So on the day when it was released, I rushed on it and, and did all my ideas.
Wow, but how did you, because your style is not like just came up, like you already had a style, but you were using other tools. So how did it translate? And was it ever that you dreamed of, or?
It was better.
Oh,
yeah, it was better because I had the idea of the art direction, because my idea is try to replicate the exact thing that I did on digital 2D softwares. So I used softwares like Krita and Clip Studio Paint, and I already used like flat colors with black outlines. That was it actually happened quite at the same time when the Blender 2.8 was released.
Mm-hmm.
It was the time when I finally found my style and say, I want to do animations with it. And then Blender was, the new Grease Pencil was released. I say, okay, I will try to replicate this, but on Blender. So this was the challenge I had in mind. And then I discovered that I could move some layers, add more deformations, rotations. Okay, so this is going further than what I expected. And after a lot of experimentations, I ended up with something I didn't expect I would do.
I think, if I might add, when you started, Grease Pencil was, very unknown, I guess. And it was super new. There was no tutorials on it. Nobody could teach you anything. So you had to find out how to do things yourself. And that probably helped shape your style as well, right?
Yes, I think that's true. On every parts of Blender, it's the fact that anyone can use it in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
Some people hack it, and if they invent some process, and they think I think that's the cool thing about this software. I'm going to talk about these things in my talk. It's this afternoon.
Yeah, at what time?
It's at 4.
4 p.m.
I have to be there at 3 to see to check the slides. Yeah, but it's today at 4, and I think it will be uploaded very soon after.
Very soon.
Live.
There are already people watching this live stream. Probably are getting notifications of videos uploaded. We have a team of 3 people recording and uploading at the same time. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Wow. So this is actually pretty interesting to hear. Do you think that the tools or like your style was like how would you call it, enhanced because of some features that you end up using things that you wouldn't otherwise. I personally think that the one of the strengths of Blender is that because everything is like in one software, that you may feel curious about adding, you know, that you like Grease Pencil, but then actually, I kind of like this other thing like motion tracking, whatever.
Yeah. I started even doing things from mixing real life footage and adding Grease Pencil objects on top of it. Yeah. I saw that there was motion tracking and everything, and so it goes in every possible directions.
Yeah.
So I have so many folders of experimentations in my computer, and eventually one of them ends up in something real, something finished. But I have a lot of unfinished projects.
Yeah. I think we can all relate to that.
Yep.
So
Sure.
how about you? Because I know you because of your tutorials, but you're also a freelance artist. How did Blender arrive in your life, and how has it changed?
Well, I've only been doing Blender for about 4 years, I think. Before that, I didn't know it exists, but didn't really use it that much. I come from a graphical design background, so before this I was a graphic designer and art director. And I kind of always wanted to do 3D, but I also missed the bandwagon on that because unlike Nikki here, I'm quite old already. So I kind of missed the age where 3D and games became really big and people started doing game education and stuff like that, 3D education. And for me, that wasn't common yet. So I did a 2D education more or less. And when that finished, I finally realized, okay, I want to do something with this, but I also really like 3D. And then I noticed Blender, and I discovered it would be a very accessible way for me because it's free. That was the main reason in the beginning for me to start doing 3D. And then I also immediately found out that there's a lot of, even back then, there was already a lot of content on YouTube and stuff where you could learn things. So I was like, okay, this is the perfect time to start learning Blender. And I then picked it up in my free time. And eventually I found out, okay, this is really what I enjoy doing. I like doing 3D. I like doing Blender. I like making videos as well. And I think ever since I was little, I've always loved...
You're so young.
Yeah, just read the chat.
Go Kaizen, go Kaizen.
He's so young. No, I'm not, but okay. Anyway, so ever since I was young, I loved teaching things. I used to do tutoring to other students in my class, like for, geography or history stuff. And I love teaching. So I was like, okay, how can I combine one passion with another? And that led me to making a YouTube channel and just, creating a video, putting it out there and seeing what happened. And, that was very fun to do. I really loved doing it. And, the response, relatively speaking, of course, because it was super small at the time, but still a lot of people seem to like it. So I was like, okay, this is great. People like my stuff. And they also enjoy the fact that I'm bringing more knowledge into the community, and that made it so that I eventually quit my job and was like, okay, I'm going to do this full time and try to make a living out of this. Yeah.
That's kind of crazy to think about it, even to think about making a living out of a free software.
Yeah.
Right? Like what? How?
It's
Why is
scary.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's the same for me. I also left my job when it started to grow. The first thing, it was not the thing I did on social media, but the clients work, freelance. But it's interesting that you said that you had a background as a graphic designer and art director. I think the backgrounds we have, sometimes it can help us. It can help you on your project in Blender, and sometimes it's also it can be a trap because you want to do the same as you did on the other softwares.
Yeah.
And you try to force it and say, I want this feature, but actually there is that other feature that might be more interesting.
Definitely.
How do you deal with that, with all the features going in and out? Do you actually keep up with them, or do you use what you're happy with what you have, or like, for example, with you, is there any feature that you're looking forward to, or you're?
And I don't understand so well the questions, because what for you features?
what can Blender do? For example, we know that Grease Pencil, the 2D animation system in Blender, is about to get a big improvement because it's going to be a mix of geometry nodes, like the parametric stuff.
Geometry nodes are strawberries.
He doesn't keep up.
Yeah,
I don't keep up.
yeah. Well, that's gonna be huge because that's gonna be insane. So and I know you do programming as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's the best of both worlds. You're gonna do some creative coding or noding, and
That's really crazy.
So, for example, is there or with what you do, you use cycles or Eevee?
Always cycles.
Cycles,
Yeah. For me, renders in cycle is the life. Because with cycles, I always achieve my styles, and I always use in my renders the glare node in compositing. Because I always add spheres with emission on the windows, and that's give it a cozier effect to my scenes. But I use Blender for modeling only, and maybe sometimes I made little animations, and I always use the particle system to make my characteristic piles of leaves of my models. And people recognize me by that because and they always tell me in social media, your models are so cozy. Can you tell me how to make your models? Or people, and in Instagram, many people ask me how I started in Blender, and I'm here to tell you that in my conference tomorrow.
At what time? Sorry, tomorrow?
At 10.
Okay, 10.
In the classroom.
Yeah.
And the features that Blender offers are many for me, but I only use Blender for modeling. And I'm a big fan of Grease Pencil, but one day I try it, but it's too hard for me.
Yeah.
And I only model cozy spaces, isometric always, and that's for me.
I think it's very interesting because if we look at the three of us here, there's two, Nikki and Deduz, they both have a strong artistic background in that sense that they are artists maybe in the first place and then creators in the second place. So they just create beautiful stuff and people ask them why or how they create it. Whereas I'm sort of the opposite. I have no specific style or things I specifically create. I just try to put out knowledge there. I think it's very different ways of approaching and also very different online in the sense that how people find you, because lots of people who don't even know about Blender will probably find your art. Yeah. And whereas for me, I am mainly focused on Blender people who are already interested in Blender or looking for knowledge on Blender.
And how do you, this question is to all three, because you all three also make tutorials or some kind of training. So how do you balance your art, how much you follow your art, and how much do you want to teach a specific Blender feature or Blender workflow? Because I know, for example, you're basically using your own art and teaching how to achieve that. But for some tutorials, you have to, you can teach so much, right? It's like a tutorial can be 5 hours, right? So how do you balance that? Do you try to always, for a tutorial, try to tone it down or try to go in one direction that you know more people are going to...
Oh, you mean try to do a content that can appeal to...
Yeah.
First, I think because I talk to... I try to reach illustrators, and the thing that I think I say that to my community, the funny things about illustrators... I'm criticizing, but I'm also part of these people, is that they judge the tutorials by the look of the artwork. Like I want to do, illustrators always do like they see the drawing, they see the thumbnails, and they say it looks like a drawing that I want to do, so I will learn it. Yeah. And I tell to these people, you have to watch all the tutorials, even the ones with the art that you don't feel like you relate to it, because there are informations there that will be interesting for you, but they really they will judge it by the artwork and say, I will follow it because of a drawing. So I found I'm lucky because some people like the colors that I use or something. So this is why I always try to put as much art direction as possible in my content, even if it's a technical tutorial.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I think you're also really on the sort of the the last few years you have the lo-fi sort of movement, with the lo-fi music, lo-fi hip hop, and your art kind of, for me at least, it goes into that direction, and I think it's a very big movement currently. So it's very cool.
Yeah, but it's also, as I said, I'm also part of these people, so I'm not doing this just on purpose to get the views. I try to also create the content that I want to watch myself. And I also do that. I also like to see the artwork before starting the tutorials. But I tell the people, try also to watch other stuff that even if the art doesn't look good to you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's a good one. And also, how do you, on YouTube, you have to keep up with the trends, whatever there is a trend of this one. And how do you balance that? You follow it, or you just go with what I feel like making a tutorial about whatever.
In my case, people, I ask the people in my social media what they want to watch in my YouTube channel or on Reels on Instagram, because now are booming the Reels. And
yes.
And many times I have to repeat a same model because the cozy kitchen that I made, many people ask me how to model the scene, and I've decided to create a series of tutorials of how to create that cozy scene, and that's all. I always ask the people, because the opinion of them are so helpful for me, and that's amazing. I think that the contribution of the community is so important in these cases.
Yeah,
it is, but there is a limit too, because you
That's
also
what I wanted to say as well.
deep inside you are an artist. You want to make art.
What you want to make.
How you also do tutorials of all kinds of things. Do you try to add your art, or how does you
No, not necessarily. No.
You feel a bit dead inside because of that?
No. I mean, I give my own twist to it anyways, because I usually need a model or a scene to teach. So I'll just make that and give it my own look and feel. But I was talking about it with Curtis Holt, who probably you know as well, at least lots of the viewers do. And there's always a fine balance, I think, between being an artist and being a creator and making what the algorithm wants, because basically that's what it is, and making what you want to make. And if you do too much, just playing the algorithm, just doing exactly what YouTube wants you to do, so maybe clickbait, all those things, eventually I think you'll burn out as an artist. So I try sort of to listen to what my audience has to say, but at the same time, if I find a subject which I find interesting, then I'm just going to make it.
Yeah, I think that nails it.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. We have visitors, or I hear...
The door went open.
Yeah. I think there's people coming. All right. So if you... it's a bit scary, because I'm actually looking at the camera, so there is... So I think someone said that Captain Disillusion showed up at some point.
Oh.
Here. Yeah, it sneaked in and then out. So, yeah. No. Okay, cool. So that is... so that's how your art... how do you balance the art and the Blender side of things? Yeah. And do you feel that Blender itself, is it enough for the things that you want to teach? Do you try to involve other tools, or do you think no?
No. And for that reason, I usually don't make videos about experimental builds. So like the beta and alpha builds. I don't use them, and I don't try to use add-ons as well, because I just want to use a stable version of Blender, which I know everybody can download. Everybody has a working version. It won't crash. There's no add-ons needed. So it's the threshold for following along is as low as possible.
Yeah, no Wrangler only.
No, yeah, okay. Yeah, about that. Can we make it
Okay,
like
feature
default?
feature request coming.
Yeah. So someone in my comments said, why is Node Wrangler enabled by default and then just opt out instead of opt in? And I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense, because now every tutorial I have to say,
You have to
well,
say it.
if
Yeah.
you want to do this, then you have to enable the Node Wrangler add-on.
Yeah. All right. So there is a few reasons for that. Chris Spencer has its own add-on as well. You have your own add-on as well. I think at some point in an artist's life, you end up making your own add-ons. And
Yeah, I will talk with the developers. It's if there are some parts that are not working, because I've started Python a year ago. I try to make it work, but also it's an add-on for a specific workflow. I don't think that the majority of people will need it, but I think some people work in the same way as me can need it.
yeah. It's a rabbit hole, though. Once you start, you just
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
I have to update it, and there are some
Then
I have to
people
keep up.
rely on it, and then it's a rabbit hole. So actually, in the long term, it's better to just try to get those features in Blender itself. I have my own add-on also that I started by my own. Then I started to make proposals of smaller parts of my add-on, and they actually end up in Blender. So it feels like an accomplishment. So I could recommend. So why is the Node Wrangler not enabled by default? Really, like the short answer would be because nobody actually cared to do it, because it's so easy to just enable it. You enable it once and it's over. But the long answer is okay, Node Wrangler. I think even if Node Wrangler's features, like what makes Node Wrangler, like all the tools, would be in Blender, I think we still need to have some kind of Node Wrangler, because there will always be extra features that maybe don't cater everybody.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
The problem is that the Node Wrangler has some really handy features. The thing is, one of the most handy features is Ctrl-Shift-Click on a shader to create.
Yep.
Yeah.
I use it for that.
Yeah.
But you've seen what it does.
Yeah, for merging nodes and stuff, I think it's very convenient as well. But Ctrl-Shift-Click is, for sure.
But you've seen what it does. It just makes an emission shader that it calls it viewer, and then so it's a hack. Yeah. So you don't want have this kind of hacks in Blender by default, because it's not very stable, right?
Okay,
it can break any time, and so somebody has to maintain it. So who's going to maintain it? Yeah. So that is one of the reasons that should be implemented natively. But some other things like a Ctrl-T for getting the
image texture and the mapping and texture coordinates. Yeah,
that should be in by default. So I would say anybody in the community can help with making sure that at least some of the tools from the Node Wrangler, the ones that are legit, actually really handy and no hacks, just convenience features, could port them over, make a little patch. Hey, what do you think? Accept, and it's done.
Yeah.
But someone has to do it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Also, the add-ons, right now the add-on is in part of Blender, so it will be updated by the community. Mm-hmm. But not the case with many community add-ons.
No, that's definitely true.
Every time you add a feature in Blender, you add burden to the developers. Yep. So that is one of the. But as long as someone comes with a
good proposition
and it's like, I'm gonna maintain it, that's always welcome. Actually, my add-on is also part of Blender, not enabled by default, but it's there, and I am the one that gets tagged every time it breaks. So it's a good thing, but also a little bit of work on your.
I'll go find somebody the next few days and make them responsible for it.
Yeah,
maybe some coder or somebody who
but
builds add-ons.
Yeah, but I also try not to use any add-ons other than Node Wrangler and the screencast keys.
Yeah,
for the tutorials.
Same.
But other than that, add-ons are some people say that Blender is unusable without add-ons. I don't think it's that far. But in your case, do you use any add-ons?
Yes, I use some add-ons like loop tools.
Yeah.
And the Blender Kit add-on is so useful because you can import textures, models, and that's amazing. And other add-ons that I usually use is the extra mesh or extra curves. And I use it a lot because you can add new meshes or new curves that, like for example, the spiral curve
Yeah.
is so useful for me. That's all. That's all the add-ons that I usually use in my models.
And they all come with Blender.
Yes.
Yeah. So in that case, that is a mix, because in Blender we want to have, the asset browser has been around since Blender 3, but it's still a work in progress. And also by default, you open Blender for the first time, you go to the asset browser, it's empty, and it even gives you an error, not an error, a message that, hey, there is nothing set up on your preferences. Like, it's your fault, right? So it's not very handy. Blender could show more like there by default, even the Suzanne or the cube. And actually in the last 2 days, we had a workshop at the Blender studio where we talked about this and how the welcoming screen of Blender could be a bit more welcoming.
Maybe a bit more tutorial-like in a sense.
Not even tutorial, because everybody here adds a cube and deletes a cube, right?
Yeah.
So why is the cube not there by default? Instead of having Shift A, mesh, cube, is like Shift A, mesh, cube. So it's like 3 steps.
Mm-hmm.
It could be at the bottom of the most recent, even the first time you can just show the most used items, drag and drop, and that would be like one way to go. But then for that, Blender has to come built in with some assets, which can add a little bit of weight. But actually, some of the extra mesh, extra curves, some of the assets are actually made like with code. They are like mathematically built, so like spiral stuff. So those wouldn't use much space. So actually, it would be cool. We want to introduce also community libraries. I don't know if you've seen, there is a blog post called Blender Extensions in the code blog. We published it last week.
No, I haven't seen it. Was it what Ton was
I
mentioning?
saw that, but I haven't checked the video.
He mentioned it on the
on the talk. Yeah.
keynote.
Yeah.
And he mentioned even like 3 big projects that Blender is working on. That one is a proposal, it's a wishful thinking basically, but two projects that we're working on. One is Blender Extensions platform, so it's extensions.blender.org. You go there and you download add-ons and keymaps and themes and stuff, Blender stuff, all open, free and open source.
Yeah.
Well,
So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
that will
really
be
nice.
that will be amazing. So actually, the website is already ready to be tested at least and continue to develop. The one side that is missing is the connecting it with Blender itself, so you can say, okay, I want these add-ons, and they get updated online instead of you having to download a zip file every time.
Yeah.
So that would be huge, in order for people to upload, because we also want to have assets there. So if you made a really nice, cute little TV and you want to share with the world, you should be able to make your own Nikki asset library.
Well,
And then people
that's
do
so
it.
useful for the people.
Yeah, for everybody, for yourself,
Yeah.
even if you
Yeah.
share it with the
Yeah.
people.
So-
With you should be able to have your own asset libraries as well online. So we've been exploring that. Then there is the Blender apps, which is not out yet.
Standalone application, like functioning on Blender.
Yeah. So you've seen the keynote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was there.
Okay. Yeah. The idea is that Blender could be because some parts of Blender could be anything. If you want a storyboard tool, you need Grease Pencil, a few other tools, but you don't need like the motion tracker maybe, or sculpting meshes, right? So in that case, you could just remove everything else and have a tiny little app that you can take around. Or if you're an architecture, for example, architect, and want to share this room to the clients.
Crazy feature, like it's a new version,
It's an app.
And it's a new app.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can, or if you have a exhibition somewhere, you can have a computer where you double click it's a new type of blend file even, and it will open
you choose what you want in the app.
what you want to enable, and then you can add controls. You can extend it with Python, of course. You can do anything.
And do you
That
feel
would
it
be
will be out
awesome.
on iPad and stuff? Because I can imagine a world where he can grease pencil on his iPad,
I thought about this for many days. So because to the animators, when you show Blender to them, so they are screaming, "What's this? Where is there a cube there? I just want to draw." So
Yeah.
so you give them an app where there is just a grease pencil.
Like
you love it.
Procreate, but then grease pencil
Yeah.
style.
Yeah.
Because there is already a default 2D file in Blender, but the thing is, when you don't know Blender, sometimes you press a key, like you press Z, and everything changes. If you don't know what this key does,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're completely lost. I remember the first day I used Blender, I pressed something, and I didn't know what have I done. So I have to check to learn all the shortcuts and be careful not to put my hands on the keyboard.
No, don't be careful. You know, when
Yes,
I,
you have to test.
Making
When-
mistakes is the best way to learn.
when I
right?
started using Blender 20 years ago, one of the things I did, well, Blender had like 10% of the features it has now, but I was like, okay, I was looking at Blender on a CRT screen, and I was like, okay, this is the keyboard. Okay, so A, all right, it selected everything. Double A, what? It deselected somehow. And then S, and then I pressed all the keys and to learn what it was doing.
Yeah, you're right.
That's a good way to learn.
Yeah, I did it as well.
As long as you don't do it in production files, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you have to use a dummy file.
Yeah. But the idea is that you can ship Blender apps, just like phone apps or
would be so cool.
Flash for you old people, like Flash apps. And I don't know how old you're now. You don't know.
31.
31. Jeez,
Chris,
I'm the
Chris.
oldest in this place.
Grease pencil. I'm more than 30, but
Yeah.
wow, grease pencil on an iPad, that would be awesome.
I cannot
Yes, no
not
promise.
No promises.
confirm nor deny that. But that-
Okay.
It would be cool. It would
We
be
have a
cool.
new info.
That's part of the goal. And there is the Blender Lab, another thing that Blender
Yeah.
Ton mentioned in the keynote, and everybody that is at home can watch it on the YouTube channel. But basically, the gist of it is that right now everything that gets developed, in Blender for Blender, ends up in Blender. Everything you do you don't have a lot of room to experiment, to think of like, okay, I just want to code for coding, without thinking of having it in Blender.
Mhm.
So it is some kind of like a lab. It's a lab. So it's like, okay, I'm a scientist. I know how to do physics really well, but I want to have this. I want to make a new type of physics. I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to invent a new color.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know, crazy stuff. And then, okay, so here is a grant for this much money for this many months and research stuff.
That's very interesting.
Many of the features or the I don't know, new technology that gets developed for
Mhm.
Unreal or for Autodesk product or like anything in general. It's not like everybody invented polygons, right? Like for each app, or invented subsurface scattering for each app.
No.
It's like the one paper, two papers maybe,
Yeah.
that gets implemented. So the idea is that Blender could fund this kind of development
Research, yeah, and that's
Yeah.
very good.
and lead the industry. So if one of these papers gets, published, of course, open source, all the other apps could,
That's
software
really cool.
could implement it.
Yeah.
Pretty big. Yeah. Ambitious.
Very,
Whoa.
but
Yeah.
also I think a great future, because then it will really open up and attract people with different interests who might not be interested right now, because it has to be Blender oriented,
Yeah.
and then they can just create something amazing, maybe even VFX wise or whatever you want, and then Blender can just sort of take the idea and implement it.
Yeah. It is part of the mission of Blender, which I would like to ask you. Is a bit corny, the question, but let's see. Here, since I have you here, or like maybe because I think you have it already. You all kind of answered the question before. So Blender's latest like slogan motto, it's the freedom to create. Do you think this applies to your work? And if so, what do you think? What is the freedom to create for you?
It's a tough question. It's a philosophical question. What is the freedom to create?
I mean, you can make it philosophical or purely like, it's free. I don't have to pay for it, so and I create, so that's it. But also, does it apply to other areas? Do you think about it? Do you think it's like I can actually do what the hell I want?
Yeah, it's also the fact that it's free and you can create free content with it or paid content with it. Thing is, it was something that I could not imagine in the past. And the awesome thing is that the model works for us and also for Blender, because Blender thrives now. We get funds and we get a free software. It's really the definition of freedom to create, and it's the fact that you can do everything in just this software.
So that applies to the freedom to create.
Yes, and also the fact that the people implement features. I think it's a very good thing, because you have an idea, you submit it on somewhere on the forums, and there are chances that if people like it, it gets implemented one day. So that's also the part of you also the freedom to give your inputs on the development.
That nails it.
Yeah.
How does it apply to you, the freedom to create?
For me, freedom to create is everything, because thanks to Blender, I can do the models I do, and people can share my art, enjoy my art. And if I post any of my models, people can make a root inside the models, and that's amazing for me. And I love to make what I do with love and heart. And for me, freedom to create is my life, and I love to model in Blender, and I love that the program is free for everyone, and that's very impressive.
That's kind of amazing, right? That you can
it's
tell
amazing.
people just download it. It's like you
Yeah.
get that question. So, what software do you use?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. That's what you say. Yes, I wanted to add something. I should rename my username on Instagram, but
The
I use
Blender.
Blender.
That is, yeah.
I use Blender.
I use Blender. Yeah, the fact, there is, I think every day I open Blender, really, even if I don't have any particular project, or at least every day that I have a computer. Sometimes I don't have my computer, but it's like sometimes you just open YouTube without any reasons.
Mhm.
And for me, it's the same. I open Blender without reason, and it's just there. And so if
It's like an addiction.
it's an addiction. I have an idea. I want to draw something. I just draw something, and I close it. I don't save the files.
Yeah.
Mm.
I had
It's like a
few
notepad.
minutes.
Like
Yes,
you
it's
used
like
to
having
always
a
have like a
pen.
notepad with a pen. And
Yes, it's really my everyday life. And sometimes I save the files, but most of the time I just close it, and I just want to have a few minutes playing with Blender every day.
yeah, sure.
That's good. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. And like a blend file a day, I don't know, keeps the creativity awake. Hey, that's nice.
Oh, yeah.
So, and how about you?
Yeah, well, for me, it's two-sided. On one hand, the freedom is the fact that I can now do what I want without having to pay monstrous amounts of money to sustain this, and it gives me an outlet for my creativity and for me to make a living. So it's a very, very big plus. But what I think is the best thing in this mission statement is basically that freedom feels like being part of a movement. I think since 2019, when Blender really started growing super huge, it feels like a movement now. So there's so much online of tutorials of people like Andri and Nikki who make amazing things, and it inspires you to create.
Thanks so much.
So it's not necessarily a freedom, but more freedom in the sense that it gives me inspiration, and I think it gives loads of people inspiration to actually start doing art, whether that's 2D, 3D, it's creating in general.
That is a really good point. Someone once said to me something that it clicked is like the fact that Blender is accessible, is free, whatever. It brings people that is not necessarily from the 3D industry, from the movie industry, from the games industry.
No.
People that are just at home and want to maybe,
Yeah.
maybe they
That's
don't even do anything related. They like, I don't know, gardening. And it's like, oh, actually, this looks pretty cool. And they end up doing their own little, like, I don't know, mock-up for a garden or really experimenting. So they find what they really like or what they are even sometimes.
Yeah.
Through 3D.
That's what freedom, exactly that.
It's right. I had some stories of friends who told me that like people are musicians or actors that said, I need to do this for our music club or theater, and we didn't know how to do it. We found out that we could do this with Blender. So if they learn a tutorial just in one night and say that I did a mock-up of my project with Blender, that people are not in the 3D world at all.
Yeah, I think that's really cool as well. Yeah, I have this. Well, I have like some music tutorials, and then there's just artists who make music, and they're like, okay, I want to put my music on YouTube, and I don't want to have this static image, so I'll just make a very simple music video for it. And I mean, it's those little things that I think is what makes Blender great.
It is. And the biggest thing, I think, and that the reason why we are all here on a massive, beautiful building in the middle of Amsterdam, 700 people. It is really hard to believe. But the strongest aspect of Blender, and something that I've been a Blender user for more than 21 years, and I still don't understand what does Blender has. It's like a living form that even before it was free, because it had nothing to do with being free, because Blender was available for download in 98. It was made in 94, but it was available in 98. And from 98, you could use it for free, but you had to pay for like subsurf. You had to pay for something.
Okay.
But even then, a community in Brazil started using Blender a lot, and there was like one of the biggest, the first communities that became big enough, was in Brazil, and then it spread all over the place. So when Blender wanted to become open source, wanted to raise money, it only took 7 weeks for it to become open source and become free. Yeah. So that was 2002. What happened between 98 and 2002? That attracted people. Blender was right-click select, was missing a lot of features, but it had the game engine. The reason I started using it is because of the game engine. But what does this living form has that makes you want to use it? Is it because you like you said, it opens fast and closes fast, so you can do it. You can open it faster than the notepad probably or something. You can, I don't know, what is it that brings us together? And related to that is the community. The reason why we are all here is because of the Blender community. Because if Blender would make a conference but no one signed up, we wouldn't be here. And we sold out more than a month ago, 2 months ago. Yeah, it's insane. So, one question. How would you describe the Blender community to aliens from Mars? How would you describe the Blender community besides being fanatics and maybe slightly can get a bit intense sometimes, depending on the threads that you go on the YouTube videos. But you all have your own communities, right? And Blender is probably a big part of it. Maybe less for the dudes, because you have your own style, and actually people are asking what software do you use more than ever. But actually you too, you get people asking you what software you use often, I guess.
Yes.
It's on your nickname, actually.
I think that the Blender community, all the people that I know that dedicate themselves to modeling Blender or do illustrations in Blender, animation, programming, I think that the people are so kind and lovely, and I love that because that's very helpful for the artists, because they share all the arts that they see, and I think that that's an important pillar for the society and for the artist community, and I'm very grateful for that.
That's so nice. So how would you describe the Blender community to aliens from Mars? What is it? What is this?
I think they're very eager to learn, most of all. So and very happy that there's a place filled with free knowledge. So I think the most comments I get are just thank you for putting this out there, and thank you for making the community stronger. So I always feel like the Blender community in itself, even though most of us don't know each other, it still feels like a community, which is strange because it's just people all over the world watching online content and consuming that, and somehow it forms a community, which doesn't really make sense in a way because you don't even know each other, but still it feels like a strong community. And I guess that's because people want to be part of it and are eager to learn, eager to grow, and eager to provide as well to this community. So it's not just people taking from it, but it's also loads of people giving to the community.
That's a very nice way of describing it.
Yeah, I haven't much to add. It's you said it all. Maybe I can add just that this might make the community look like fanatics again. But what I like interesting with the people is like they are really they really love the software. They are attached to it, as if it was their own software. Like when you say to somebody that uses Blender, you know what, I did this with Blender, and they are really proud, as if it was their achievement.
Yeah.
So that's I really love that. Like they say, oh, I'm so proud because this was done with Blender. If they don't own the software, but if they are proud for Blender,
it's like soccer. People are proud of their team even though they don't play for it or they just support it.
Yeah, and they refer to it as we.
As we.
We
yes,
won.
As we
We
won.
this. We won.
Yes.
We as Blender are growing and doing good. Yeah.
But why doesn't it happen with other? Well, at least I'm not really much in other communities. But why? What is it? Is it the because it's free? Also, the teaching. Like I also started making tutorials because I felt like I had to give something back to the community. What is it?
Yeah, because we don't say that for all the softwares. Like I'm not proud that something is done with Procreate or Photoshop. Like
Even though Procreate is amazing and it's not it's not like a big major company like a multi-billion, right? So there is a similarity of a smaller community, but the proud of using the tool is not the same as.
I think maybe it's also because in the industry it's always like the not standard software. Like people say, hey, we use Maya. This is professional stuff, and Blender is like the outsider. And I think the people, the community are happy that it's making a breach in the industry, and maybe it's a part of why we are all proud when we achieve something with Blender.
The underdog.
But kind of. Yeah, I think so.
But with the growth that Blender has, do you think that's going to change?
Currently, no, because we're still on the wave. And the wave is going and it's going, and people keep making it bigger by adding more content and more amazing artworks in there. So
10 years.
Yeah, I think eventually it'll slow down, but it'll never die out because there's too many people who, like we already said, love the software. So they'll just keep on making it better. And I think as long as we can create amazing content and amazing artworks, and we have a dedicated development team which loves working on the product, there's no reason for it to go slower or die out at all.
Yeah. Unless there is another one comes out.
I think the worst case, and it won't even be a bad scenario, is that it becomes so standard.
Yeah.
That it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And
they start teaching it in all the schools.
Yeah, so it will be different, but it won't be bad. It won't be a very bad situation.
Yeah. What do you think? Blender in 10 years.
Wow, that's not many years.
No,
And that's so remarkable because as I say, I started about 5-6 years ago, but professionally I started 2 years ago. And I started with a 2.83 version, I think. And
LTS,
now I use the 3.3. And wow, 10 years for me are so much because it's a half of my
half of our life. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Maybe you weren't right for the right question, but okay. I think I wouldn't even be able to describe it. Not even 5 years from now. It's
evolving so
Blender,
much.
not only Blender, but open source in general is very unpredictable.
Yeah.
So you don't know what the industry is going to have. Like 5 years ago, we couldn't even think about DALL-E, right? For making your AI textures and stuff. So
and the AI is coming in Blender.
Yeah, it already is like with add-ons, right?
Yeah, there is an add-on for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you use any kind of AI assistant for your work? Like maybe there is AI. Not everything is evil, right?
Yeah, sure.
So you could render in a small size because your computer, I don't know, can't handle that big size, and then you upscale it with AI. So there's a good kind. I think that would be pretty nice and not so much evil AI to add.
Yeah.
But are you using any kind of?
No, in my
Mm,
mother's
yeah.
side they use any kind of that tool.
I've used it before because they contact me before it went public. So they gave me the beta access, and I was curious, and I used it. But I tried to look at the artwork that is made by the AI. I don't feel like it's my artwork. I use it like as it was done by someone else. So I kept all these things that I generated as references. So I just keep it in my computer and I look at it. And sometimes it inspires me, but I don't want to like publish it, like say that this is what I did, right? Because I see it's the work of millions of people all put in
Combined,
one
yeah,
image.
yeah.
Feels
So-
like cheating.
Yeah, there was one project where I used it, but it was a small project for a friend. I had like 3 days deadline, and I was at Annecy. You know, we
Yeah.
were there together.
We were together there. Yeah.
There was a friend who called me for a very urgent project and said, I have to do it like this weekend. So I was happy that I got the access to it was Mid-Journey there. I generated some images and I use it as references or textures, and I could finish the project. But it's the only case when I use the AI, the real content from the AI in my work.
Yeah, I also use it for references. Like I was like trying to prove a point, and I have a reference like about a bucket and a sandal for some reason, like so completely random stuff. And I wanted to find a picture that had these two elements next to each other. None had it, so I just typed it on the DALL-E Mini, and it's like, oh yeah, this and that. So for some things, actually, it comes in handy. Also for textures, I wanted to I needed to have a very specific kind of texture, and you can just have it
Yeah.
made.
I see it working for those kinds of things, like
Yeah.
for creating a texture or.
Yeah, I also saw people who use it to complete textures.
Yeah.
Like you have two different scans and you have a hole in it, and there you use the AI. And I think in this case, it's not like you're stealing the style of someone. You have the photos, you have a hole, you need to complete it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, in that case, I think it would be very useful. There is a fear that it's going to take over our jobs, and it might take over some jobs because not every job is the same. So if you were making some kind of I don't know, more generic character for this or that, in illustration, for example, maybe it can be replaced more easily. But I think the sooner that we as 3D artists start to use it as part of our job, we're going to be safe, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still wondering because my first reaction was, but I'm not sure if this is true, but I thought that maybe if everyone has access to this, well, if you're an artist, you have the access plus the knowledge of art, so you're always ahead.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's different this time. Like you have the AI same as everyone, but you have more things to add in addition to the AI content. So maybe you will still a few steps ahead. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just goes too fast though, because at the beginning of the year was like, hey, pictures, we can do pictures, and now you can do video.
Yeah,
And
that's crazy.
Now you can do 3D also, right? Google has this thing that you can actually build 3D objects out of just typing.
Yeah, and also you can learn from your own library. That's something that someone did a few months. Like you post your own photo for your personal use, and now you say, I want me in a castle.
Yeah.
So you can scan a whole team of actors and make the movie previews with their real faces generated by the AI.
Yeah, Core the Crew did a great segment on
Yeah.
AI-generated versions of themselves, which looked like, but then like drawn as a knight or, you know, as a movie action hero, and it was super well done.
It's crazy. I start to stop watching it because it's overwhelming. I get lost.
Yeah.
So sometimes you if there are so much things happening, and if you don't have like one goal for what you're doing, you can get lost in all these things.
Yeah.
It can
And
be overwhelming. For sure.
it can be overwhelming. And in those cases, what do? You also you play. You're a musician.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you? I'm curious about. And then we can wrap up in a bit because I know you have to go at some point too.
Yes.
Yes.
I will have to join Francesco very soon. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. No, also we need to wrap up in a bit. But I'm curious about your way of blendering. For example, I just the way I do it is just try to close everything that I can. Open Blender, open a reference, put on music, and just try to go at it try to do everything before. Like if I need to get water, or tea, and then go to the restroom, have this, I have that, I have the temperature is fine. I just try not to block as many hours as possible as I can. But it doesn't always work. So sometimes it's just inspiration just comes from just like you said, open Blender and try things without saving the file. So do you have any like special layout for your work in particular?
The settings on Blender, you mean? The layout outside.
As in you, like what do you do to like, not get overwhelmed by AI?
To get productive.
To get productive.
It's always a bit chaotic, but it's all in my room. Like I have my piano on the side. I have my sketchbook. I spend a lot of times on my sketchbook, and I try to sketch everything before I start the artwork in 3D.
Oh, so you're first in pen, paper?
First in pen, yes. I didn't. There was a time where I didn't do that, but now I try to do this all my artworks, because for me the art direction in my case is very important, and sometimes with my pen I get some lines that I didn't expect on the computer because it's super fast.
Yeah. So you find it better to start with a pen?
Yeah. For me, just some drafts, and then I look at it and I draw. And also, I have Pinterest, and the old ways still work. Sometimes, I like to work with while looking at work of other people, but even sometimes I don't even watch it for references. It's just like for motivation. Like I like to be surrounded by cool artworks, so it motivates me. It's like when you listen to music while you work, and for me the same. I need to have posters of Ghibli and stuff, and it motivates me. Yeah. Like I see people who do great things, and it makes me want to do great things too.
Yeah, that's the biggest inspiration. How about you, Nikki?
About my models, I always start by building a board in Pinterest, for example, and other times I watching TV or reading a book, and then my brain click and I have an idea, and I open Blender, and then I start with the magic. And there are also many incredible artists and projects made with Blender, and that's so inspiring for me to make other models. Or also photographies that I see on Google or on Pinterest, and that's all the inspiration for me to make my models.
Yeah. Do you like all your models, your renders there are like so cozy and nice? I can picture that your setup also is like that, or like I don't know. I work, for example, I work better at like I don't know, after midnight, from midnight to like at 2 or 3 a.m. That's like my block of being productive. But I picture based on your art is like you wake up, have a nice coffee, and the sun is shining on the window, and then you make these beautiful scenes. Or also, how do you work?
Some days I work at night, but every day I open Blender and I start it in the morning, and I finish the piece of art at night, and that's all.
Are you a night owl too?
Night owl, yeah. How about you?
Well, I don't usually work nights, not anymore at least. But I think my main thing is usually when I start in the morning, I can determine whether or not this is going to be a productive day already, because you you guys might relate to that. You can feel it sort of if you are going to have a good day and you have like, okay, the ideas feel fresh, they feel good. And other days you are already in sort of a mindset where it's like, I don't feel like I'm going to make great stuff today. And I think it's perfectly fine to then just say, okay, I'll do some stuff which I can get out of the way. And then maybe, you know what, I'll just play a game. I watch a YouTube video, I watch a tutorial maybe. Doesn't really matter as long as it's directly not working within Blender and doing what I am supposed to do for maybe 30 minutes or so. And that sort of resets your mind sometimes. And then it gives you the headspace to restart over and sort of find new creativity. And like Dedu said, I do really like having reference open and artworks and stuff. But I also often find that if I scroll too much on like Instagram or something, then it's like, oh my God, all these people are they're so amazing. And I don't feel like I can compete with that. And it sort of makes me feel worse about what I'm creating instead of giving me inspiration. So I try to find a balance between looking up amazing artworks and sometimes just ignoring them on purpose, like, okay, I'm going to put my blindfold on and act like I'm making the greatest thing ever and not look at other people's artwork because it's sort of limiting my creativity.
Limiting? In a way. Wow, it's like the complete opposite.
Yeah, I can see both. So I do use reference and I do have amazing artworks open to inspire me. But like I said, sometimes, and I guess that's more because I'm sort of a generalist and I don't have my own particular style, then it sort of, I always feel like, oh, I really like this, so I'm going to make something that looks sort of similar. And so it detracts from me creating what I want to create, and instead I start creating what I find online and what I see a lot of and what I find amazing, which sometimes can be a bit too much for me.
Bit much. But what do you mean that you don't have your style? Do you make way too many different styles in order to be called a style? Because I think that's, as long as you keep doing what you like, at the end your style just comes out, I think, in a way, right? Like it's not like you look, I'm gonna make my own style. It's like you just, I don't know, do what you like to do, and then your style comes.
I think I have a style as a person in the way I teach, in the way I present, the way I showcase information. But I mean it more as in, if somebody says, oh, do you know the Deuce? Then they immediately think of something visually, at least if they know him. And for me, that's not the case. And I think the same would go for Nikki because she has something recognizable, which if somebody saw it and they knew her, they wouldn't have to know it was her post and still say, oh, this is like a Nikki.
It's two different paths, I think, for freelancers. There are freelancers who want to do one specific style and who want to be hired by that. And there are freelancers who want to be good, good illustrators and work on so many different projects.
They just do what the client asks.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that it's not good. They like it.
No, of course.
They can adapt. So it's another way of work.
If you want to work at a studio, it is really important that you know how to follow a concept art, right? So it's actually it's valuable in the industry, but it also fights with what you want to do, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yep.
So, but I think both are valid, and having or not having a style is I don't know. What do you think about? You think your style? Did you look for it, or just came out by itself?
When I started modeling, I didn't have a specific style because I learned by my own. I didn't follow any tutorials to learn how to model in Blender, and by searching inspirational projects, piece of art, illustration from other artists, I build my own style, and I think that when people see any of my models, they can say that are my models because I have many details that is so characteristic of my style.
Yeah. So by little, you started like building and coming out too. And the same with you, Dedu. Do you think your style when you were using different tools, do you think you started to build it part by part? Because you also even like make paper
Yeah.
cartoons and like stop motion, and they also have your style. So
Yeah, it took a while. At some point, I think unconsciously, I knew that I will never be the best animator or the best 3D modeler. So the thing that I can do is try to have to do something different. If I cannot be better than the others, I can try to do something that is really my own thing.
Yeah.
So I won't compare it to the others that much. That was one of the reasons. There are so many reasons.
Yeah.
And also it's a gamble, because the more you do your own stuff, the less you have clients asking for you, because they say if this does not work with our brand.
yeah, but you also have the issue that the brand may want to use your style to promote, right?
Yes, sometimes, yeah. The thing is, I have to refuse some client projects sometimes, but when something matches with a client, it's always a good project. So it's a gamble about saying no to so many people, so that the one time that you say yes, it's a good project.
Yeah.
But it's a balance that is hard to find, because sometimes you are tempted to do things because you need to pay the rent and stuff.
Yeah. Pay the rent.
Make a
the
living.
rent.
Yeah.
That
Yes,
is-
and pay taxes in France. Taxes are crazy.
yeah, everywhere. I think the lucky thing is that we don't have to pay for the software.
El Francisco.
The Dalai, how are you?
Dalai.
We're streaming live, by the way.
I'm confident. Dalai.
I was just checking that. I think we found a nice closing for this live stream. I'm hosting a Blender Hoy, the Spanish community. Actually, you're coming, yes?
Yeah.
All the Spanish. There is a French community meeting already happened, I think.
Yeah.
German is happening this afternoon, and Blender Hoy, the Italian is also today. We put all of them in the same day, so we can hang out, meet each other, and then hang out for the rest of the day. So I don't know about the Dutch. They don't
There's
have Dutch.
very few Dutch blenders,
Yeah.
actually.
All right, but
Strange enough.
yeah, we're in the
So
Netherlands.
this is like a request for Dutch people to start using Blender.
Blender is
Yeah.
Dutch. Come
It's
on.
amazing. It's from here.
Yeah, be proud. All right, so thank you, Dedus. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
Kaisen. Yes, actually, where is Kaisen? Where it come from?
It's a Japanese word. It's actually
Ah.
business philosophy. It means continuous improvement.
Oh.
And with that, we close the show for today. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. There will be another podcast. You can check the timeline on Blender on the conference. Actually, the next one is in 1 hour. By the at 4 in the same channel by the Live Felinto with developers. Who is coming? You gotta say here.
We're gonna have Brecht van Lommel, known for his work in cycles. Falco David, the Chris Spencer developer, now working of the Spa Animation Studio, known for Klaus. And then Lucas Tone, who worked in the Blender Studio back in the Cosmos Laundromat day, and is now at Microsoft Havoc and is still contributing to Blender.
Amazing. So tune in and share the link if you see it. The links to everybody's social YouTube channel there is on the description somewhere, and on Instagram, if you follow blender.official, I tag you all, so at least 2 socials are there out of
Great.
all of them. Your Pinterest, I don't know, but we're gonna see. All right, that is all. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the next video.